I'm going to talk about a subset of legends, kind of riffing off Carey's broad treatment of legends, contemporary legends, urban legends. I'm going to talk about a subset, possibly beloved to many of us. I'm going to talk about ghost stories. The philosopher and theorist Michel de Certeau, in his book, The Practice of Everyday Life, opined briefly that haunted places are the only places people can live in. Ghost stories, like other legend types that Carey talked about, are localized. They're set in specific places. They're anchored to space. Usually they're spaces that we can and do experience in everyday life, spaces through which we pass on a regular basis. But the ghost story does something interesting with these spaces. Those stories highlight the extraordinary in the ordinary. They forge an inextricable link between lived everyday experiences of place and a sense of the true other, the bizarre, the mysterious. Ghost stories make the prosaic profound, they make the humdrum horrifying, and they put a little bit of the miraculous into the mundane. Do we have ghost stories here in Vermont?
Yep.
Anybody ever heard the story of Emily's Bridge? Okay, somebody tell me. Emily's Bridge. Tell us the story of Emily's Bridge. What do you know about Emily's Bridge?
Didn't her boyfriend break up with her or something?
Go ahead. A little louder.
She hung herself on that bridge because her boyfriend broke up with her. Something like that.
Okay. Where is the bridge?
Stowe, or right out of
Yes.
Stowe?
The Gold Bridge in Stowe. Now known to most of us as Emily's Bridge. There's usually a narrative about a young woman jilted in love who hanged herself on the bridge when her lover didn't come to meet her, and now she haunts the bridge. What else do you know about Emily's Bridge, besides that this happened there? Anybody ever been to Emily's Bridge? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, you're right, louder. So people go, it's assumed, much of what we know about this story, it's not just the events that created the haunting, this tragic death of a young woman jilted in love, but when we tell the story, we talk about experiences that people have when visiting the site. People are expected to go to Emily's Bridge and something will happen. Anybody heard rumors or stories about what happened?
She appears.
Okay, the ghost appears, what else?
Well, it started with she would claw carriages, and there'd be claw marks on the people, the coach, and then the sides of the carriage.
Claw marks on your car,
yeah,
or on your coach in some versions of the story because of her tragic love affair. She's particularly angry and aggressive with men who visit the bridge. Young men who visit the bridge will come back with claw marks on their back or on their shoulders. Okay. This idea that people visit the sites of ghost stories is actually, it's a phenomenon that's been studied for a long time by a particular folklorist, a guy by the name of Bill Ellis, who coined the term to refer to this practice as legend tripping. Legend tripping is something that many of us have all done. It's something you typically do in your teen years. It involves a kind of mini pilgrimage to the site of a ghost story. These ghost stories tend to be set, and the ones that attract legend tripping to them, tend to be set in places that we associate with transition. Okay, it's a bridge, right? It's a point of transition between two parts of town. In my hometown, we had legend trips associated with haunted freeway overpasses, again, sites of transition, as well as a couple of cemeteries, which are other sorts of sites of transition. Typically, when one goes on a legend trip, one goes to visit the haunted site, but what else does one do? You go alone, usually? Okay, why on earth would you go to the site of a ghost story alone? No, you bring people with you for moral support, but also because it's part of communal activity. It's something that young people in this country do together. And in an increasingly mediated world in which few of our communications are face-to-face, this is still an important part of communal activity that people engage in. What else do people do when they go on legend trips? Okay? Why might you try to scare your friends on a legend trip? particularly say if you're in a mixed gendered group?
To get a rise out of somebody, maybe have somebody need you to hold on to them because you're
Absolutely. Legend trips are part of our dating practices in contemporary America. Typically, they are also associated with other kinds of taboo breaking, whether experimenting with sexuality, sometimes experimenting with drugs and alcohol. Legend trips are important rites of passage for contemporary American youth. We tend to use these things to prove ourselves in a number of different ways. Typically, legend tripping also frequently involves souvenir taking. You'll go to the site of a ghost story and try to bring something back, or leave something of yourself there. At the haunted freeway overpasses in my hometown, you were supposed to go there at midnight, and if you were really brave, you'd graffiti your name on the wall, or you'd leave a mark. These are further ways of anchoring self to space. Typically, we engage in these legend trips when we are about to leave the place in which we've grown up. It's our way of taking the ordinary, sometimes a little bit dull spaces in which we grew up, and to which we are about to bid farewell, and investing them with a little bit of extra significance, a little bit of the miraculous, a little bit of the otherworldly. Legend tripping, if you think about it, is one of the first forms of interactive entertainment. Tell the story, now take the trip. How different is this from see the movie, now ride the ride, or see the movie, now play the video game? We've been doing this for a lot longer than we've had computers, PSPs, and iPads. Legend tripping also creates the opportunity to layer stories and layer narratives, to add ghost story to ghost story. The story of your trip to the place becomes part of the overall tradition, part of the overall legend. I want to read you a little something from a website called yourghoststories.com. Just did a quick Google search on Emily's Bridge, and this came up. My name is Natalie. A few of us went to Emily's Bridge Saturday night around 12 a.m. We had digital cameras and a cell phone. We walked toward the bridge and my friend freaked out. We began taking pictures of the bridge and around it. I started using the cell phone to get some EVP, and we did get some there. When we got home, we checked the pictures, and we had a lot of orbs. Some of them had none, but a lot had them. Then my aunt accidentally called my friend Emily's name. When we watched the video, we heard "Get off the bridge." It was no one's voice that was with us. The EVP that we got, that's electric voice phenomenon, for those of you who don't watch ghost hunting shows. When I asked if she had died there, I got a yes, and "Get off my bridge," a woman talking and a woman's laughter. In some pictures, there were faces. When we were taking the EVP, I mentioned that if someone was there, please touch me and my cousin. At that time, in the pictures that were taken, there was someone following us, but just to the end of the bridge. We did see figures crouching down by the wall. All this happened, and that's in all caps. When we go back, we're going to bring a lot of batteries because they drain quick. Consider what's happening here, and consider it in light of the things we like to talk about here at Champlain. She's posting on a website. She's using a social media platform to do so. She's taking a legend trip armed with all kinds of advanced media technology for the purposes of documenting her experience. She's using her digital camera, she's using her iPhone to add her story, which she then posts online, to the overall tradition of Emily's Bridge. Natalie's story becomes inextricably intertwined with Emily's story, and Emily's story becomes a part of Natalie's story. Consider the efforts that people like Bill Ryerson at Population Media Center, along with our own EMC, are currently engaged in. They're exploring something that they're calling, the power of something they're calling transmedia storytelling, or multi-platform storytelling. How many of you have heard these terms before? These familiar to anyone? Ryerson's own website defines transmedia storytelling as the spreading of a narrative and character lives across multiple platforms. This approach has the benefit of allowing audience members to encounter parts of the story in various locations and on various media platforms, which draws them further into the fictional world, increases and diversifies audience interaction with the characters, allows audience members to participate and see things from varying perspectives, and therefore allows them to learn in different ways. Doesn't this sound like what's happening with Natalie and Emily's Bridge? The gal who coined the term transmedia storytelling, by the way, was Marcia Kinder from USC. She did so in the early 90s. Now, that was around the time that Carrie and I were also studying folklore up at UCLA. Now, I don't expect a Trojan to ever listen to a Bruin, But if she'd taken a little trip up to UCLA, we could have saved her the trouble of coining this term, because folklorists have been studying this very phenomenon for decades. With all deference to Population Media Center and the EMC, who are doing very good work with this stuff, what they're working with, this transmedia storytelling, is something that American teenagers have known and done on Friday nights with a few beers in the back of their car, arguably for decades. This has been around, and its power has been observable by people just like yourselves. Why is this important? Okay, to recap, we live in a world where we emphasize the global, the instantaneous, the immediate, the hyper-individualized. Most of our meaningful communications, once again, are mediated and not face-to-face. We love the idea of novelty, the next big thing. Consider the possibility that this hasn't necessarily made us happier, healthier, or better off than we were 100 years ago. Folklorists, people like us, tend to delineate things that we study as belonging to the realms of the communal, the common, the informal, the marginal, the personal, and the tradition. It would seem as though these concepts stand in stark contrast to the ideas of the global, the mediated, the hyper-individualized. But look at what we're doing in our global world. Look at what we're doing with our media. Look at what we're doing with our cell phones, our computers, our PSPs, our Blackberries, our Sci-Fi Channel. We're still telling ghost stories. We're still longing for that mysterious connection to place, special space, unearthly space. We're longing for communal experience, for legend trips that we take together, for common experiences of the uncommon, and for that little bit of the extraordinary in the ordinary. Thank you.